VJ Edgecombe just saved Baylor's season. This is the Locked On Baylor Basketball Postgame.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another live postgame edition of Locked On Baylor as the Bears get the win over Kansas State, a much needed win over Kansas State, and one that did not come easy. They were down basically the entirety of the first half and then the first half of the second half. But they come back, and something that I haven't seen on the StatCast ever, and it's usually drastically the other way. Baylor makes their last 7 field goals of the game after a horrid shooting start. So that's surprising that they make their last 7, but also pretty surprising because this just isn't a very gifted offensive team. The guy tonight was VJ Edgecombe, baby. Need I say any more? 30 points on the night at 30 piece. There's a lot of people watching right now that probably didn't think that VJ was capable of having a 30 piece in a college game in the Big 12. And here it is. And what you saw tonight was exactly what the VJ Edgecombe offensive experience should be. And you guys might need to turn me up a little bit in your headphones. It's a small apartment. My girlfriend's asleep. It's late. But VJ put the team on his back tonight because no one else really played all that well except for Jalen Celestine, who had his best game of the year. We'll get to him in a minute. But I talked about Jaden Nunn needing to step up. He didn't. 4 points, 1 of 5 from 3. You know, just as many turnovers as he had assists. Norchad, usually a pretty dependable guy, 1 for 9. His only field goal tonight was a 3. Like, you are not going to win games like that. And Kansas State is not a very good team. They talked about it at the end of the game. The broadcast said, well, you got to look a little bit deeper into this because they were in this game and yada, yada. And I'm like, yep, that's the Big 12, though. Like, you could have said the same thing about Baylor, but if they lost this game, you would have saw them as a bad team, which you did for most of this game. Same thing with, Cincinnati. They're in a lot of games, but this Kansas State team is not a very good team. And what's kind of funny is, like, I look at them and I look at their roster, and to me, I kind of have the same questions I do about Baylor. It's like, why is this not working out? Like, their guys are just kind of a poor man's version of some of Baylor's top guys. Like, I really like Doug McDaniel when he was coming out of the portal from Michigan 2 years ago, I guess. Not this past year, but the year before. But he's not quite, Jeremy Roach or Coleman Hawkins, obviously damn good player. Probably not quite Norchad Omier. But they haven't put it together either. That's not a very good team, but I can't critique too much when you win the game, and it didn't look like they were going to win the game for a lot of this time. They do end up getting the rebound edge. That took a while for them to get the rebound edge. They did big on bench points because Celestine, I believe, came off the bench tonight. He was terrific, by the way. Jalen Celestine. We've been waiting for a game like this from him. Like, he's not going to be one of your top 3 leading scorers, and that shouldn't be the expectation. But what we've seen from him in conference play and a little bit beyond that has just not been good enough. But he should be a guy where he can be a microwave, like Vinny Johnson, great Baylor alum, that he can come off the bench and just heat up. And when he comes in from Cal as a 40% three-point shooter, that's what he should be. And tonight he showed that. They needed a guy to step up. I said it was going to be Nunn, of talking about how these teams guard on the perimeter, if you can even call it that. And that was going to be an edge that Baylor could take advantage of if Nunn could get hot. And instead it was Celestine that got hot. 4 of 7 from 3, hit some big ones in terms of like timing, and also pulled down 7 rebounds. Second on the team in rebounds tonight. But other than that, y'all, it was still like that performance tonight is not good enough to beat a lot of Big 12 teams because you really only outplayed them for 10 minutes. And it was a very good 10 minutes, and they really turned it on defensively in that zone. But it looked hapless out there in the first half. I tweeted it, and like, Kansas State's not a good 3-point shooting team. And so I would have understood if they kept the zone the whole time, but the optics look terrible when you start the game in a man-to-man. And here Kansas State is the 13th ranked scoring offense in the conference, and you can't guard a man-to-man. Like, they were getting abused. They were getting just absolutely mismatched to death, even worse than TCU. It's really not a good look. And that will be what you can take away from this and say, well, there's still not a team that can compete at the very high level. And what I mean by that is competing for the Big 12 championship and getting past the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. But with a win like this, you say, okay, maybe that is a team that can make the tournament. I don't want to be all doom and gloom about it, but it's just one of those where obviously you could be happy. They won the game. They won a Big 12 game, but there was still just as much, I think, bad as there was good. But focusing on the good, man, VJ, like we've been waiting for this, and I've been talking about this. There is a game for VJ. There is an offensive game there. And tonight, I guess Scott might have gotten in his ear, which whatever they told him, they should have told him after the Gonzaga game, game one. But he was a much more aggressive player tonight. He got the ball with an eye towards scoring and not just shooting threes. He did take 7, but a guy who was getting the ball and saying, this scrub can't guard me, and I'm going to take him to the rack. And that last field goal he had with about 2 minutes left, minute and a half left, he gets the ball around the top of the key, and he's got one thing, and that's downhill. And actually, Ngasan, I think is how you say it, was guarding him pretty well to the rim as a big guy. And he pulled it back out, got someone else on him, and went to the rack again and scored a layup. That's what he brings to you. And he's going to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. And I'll bet we'll look back in 3 years and he's a pretty decent 3-point shooter in the NBA because that's what they do in the NBA. But for this right now, he's got to be that ultra aggressive, take my man to the hole kind of thing. And that's what Fran was talking about. Fran Fraschilla compared him to Dwayne Wade. And that's what Dwayne Wade was for actually almost all of his career, not just college. Like, that's how he got Marquette to a Final Four. Just being that guy who's athletic, quick, and can finish at the rim at the guard position and saying, you cannot defend me. I'm going to get to the rack here. I'm going to finish amongst the trees. That's what VJ gave you tonight. And that was huge. I'm checking the comments for the first time. Let's get through this. I don't want this to be a super long one. Let's see what we got in the comment section. Bear the truth. VJ obviously had a great game. Problem is, that's about all you can say. Yeah, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but there's not much I can point to and be like, that's it. And that's how they're going to turn this thing around. They still got plenty of questions to answer. Let's say that. Plenty of questions to answer. And again, this stretch here should be where you're answering them. You're a better team in Kansas State. There's not a bunch of teams that you can say in the Big 12, hey, we're better than them. You're better than Kansas State. You're better than Utah. And you're probably better than BYU. You're right there with BYU, who's being considered for the NCAA tournament, according to that graphic from ESPN. So this is where you can start to figure some things out, hopefully, if you can even say that in the Big 12 game. And we'll see what it's like when Roach comes back. They said it on the broadcast, concussion protocol, which he's obviously already been in this year. He's already missed games from that this year. That will be a tricky one. It's not one of those where you put on a brace. There's no amount of sweat that can get you back from that. So we'll have to see where that goes. I went way off with that. Parker says just run the entire offense around VJ at this point. I mean, it's not a bad idea, man. It's not a bad idea. It was not a great Rob Wright game. But the way we saw him play tonight in a Big 12 game, not against one of the Big 12's great teams, but a Big 12 game, it made you wonder, why haven't they been doing that for longer? Again, I hate taking the negative kind of stance on it, but why hasn't that been their offense for longer? Because this is what he can do. This is what he can do. Yes, this is notable from AK Danks, Scott's first win over Tang. Most of this game, I'm like, how they're seriously like Tang. We're going to keep Tang in a job. He was about to go 4-0 against Scott. Finally, the legend Scott Drew gets the win over the pupil, Jerome Tang. Ooh, this is a long one. I'm going to try and read it. Abe says, I know we're already small, but I think Drew needs to consider starting Jalen over Josh and moving Norchad to the 5. I know he's had some flashes, but Josh kills spacing and is a liability. I think he's graduated from liability, but there are certainly times and matchups that you're like, I don't want him out there very much. And tonight was kind of one of those matchups. I don't disagree with the first statement at all. In fact, you see this lineup a lot, just not starting. I think again, not a great Norchad game, 2 in a row, but Norchad can typically hold his own at the 5. I think that's more than he's more than capable of doing that. And Celestine's been a actually pretty solid rebounder from what I've watched this season, even when he wasn't doing anything else right. So I think that's definitely one where, like, I don't mind that lineup at all. Scotty V, my man, but bringing the news. Roach's day to day. We hate hearing day to day at this point. We do. We'll never know. And it's one of those, you really won't. You really won't know. Average white boy gamer. Real question. Will Langston Love ever be healthy? I hope, but it's just one of those things that you can't count on. And I got to be critical of the staff for counting on that. Like they weighed their options in the transfer portal. They obviously brought a couple of guys in here, spent some money, and we love Langston, and it's not the kid's fault. He obviously wants to be out there, and he's working to be out there. But after he goes through 3 separate injuries last year and is out for a considerable amount of time the year before, I don't know how you don't get an insurance plan for that in the transfer portal and just say, you know what, this kid, this guard probably wouldn't have normally been on our radar. Someone like a Dale Bonner, maybe not getting him from Fairmont State, but someone like that where you're bringing him up from a lower level, probably a group of 5, and you say, hey, this could be a depth piece for us. They didn't want Dale Bonner to play in 22, and they had a bunch of injuries, and he went in there and he was fine. Like that's someone I'm surprised they didn't do something like that during the transfer portal. I'm surprised they didn't have enough depth at center, and now you don't really have it at guard because you were counting on Langston Love to play the whole season. It's difficult. Disappointed with none. Me too. And he didn't have a great offensive start last year. And by start, I mean like literally into February. And he was a pretty solid player after that, including he went nuts for about 2 weeks. Maybe he can do that again. Speaking of, I was reading some of the comments before about Norchad. What the hell was he doing in the final minute with that intentional foul? Like, I know it's no layups time, but he fouls the guy and then grabs him and throws him and fouls him some more. Like, that's at that point, I think they were up 6. Like, that's the only thing that gets them back in the game. Maybe it was 9. That's the only thing that gets them back in the game is by doing that. God, that was dumb. Ugh, that was really dumb. Baylor says says Norchad has to have the flu. I don't know if this is tongue-in-cheek or satirical or whatever, but I think that actually could be correct. He clearly was not right on Sunday and got bullied. And this is 2 games in a row, and he looks a little gassed out there for a guy who has to play a lot and does a lot of dirty work for this team. That wouldn't surprise me at all if he's battling some sickness. Don't compare Roach to the mess up we had with Finn. That's because Anthony Gasso said Roach is the new Finn right before it. Hey, if Jeremy Roach comes back and he's not an impact player and he doesn't elevate this team like we think he can, it's not that bad a comparison. And I basically compared him to that on, what was it, Sunday? I think it was the Sunday postgame. You paid a lot of money for him to come in, and he's just not doing what I think the coaching staff thought they were getting out of him. Now, right now he's hurt, and I don't want to throw the kid under the bus for being hurt, right? In fact, got hurt making a big-time gritty defensive play to give his team a chance to win the game. But I think he just needs to be the two guard. I think that's just what it is. Anyway, Baylor gets back on track. They win this one. I don't know if they covered or not. Could someone let me know in the comments if they covered? 70-62 is the final. You're better than this team. You needed the comeback. You were down 10 really until the final minute of the first half, and it ends up being 4 at the half. But they fell down by 10, 11 points, I think. I think that might have been Kansas State's largest lead. And Kansas State led for 29 minutes of this game. Needed to have it, but got to get better in the paint, and more of this from VJ. Anyway, let me know what you guys think, good, bad, or otherwise. Let me know down in the comments below. Be sure to like. We got a bunch of you guys in here. Like the video. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. 75% of you that watch every day are not subscribed. That helps out the channel a ton. So like, subscribe, leave a comment, tweet at us at Real Cam Stewart for me, at Locked On Baylor. Let me know what you think. We'll have a little bit more of a breakdown in tomorrow morning's show, which I have to get on right now. So we will talk to you in the morning. Thank you guys for tuning in live. These lives are always so great, and I never know when it's 10 o'clock at night, but you guys always show up in droves, and I really, really appreciate that. Thank you for making it your first, second, third listen today and every day. We'll see you in the morning on Locked On Baylor.